Marcus Chun stepped off the transport shuttle onto the gleaming metal platform of Nexus Station, the largest arena complex in the known galaxy. The air tasted metallic, recycled through systems that had processed the breath of 1,000 different species. Around him, creatures from across the spiral arm moved with purpose, some walking on legs, others floating, a few skittering on appendages that defied easy description. The station buzzed with an energy that made his skin crawl. This wasn't excitement. It was bloodlust dressed up as entertainment. Holographic displays flickered overhead, showing highlights from recent matches. A Krillian warrior tore through 3 opponents with razor-sharp claws. A Vorthan berserker crushed an enemy's exoskeleton with bare hands. The crowd in the recordings roared with approval at each brutal moment. Marcus had seen enough violence in his 32 years. The Terran colonial wars had shown him what sentient beings could do to each other when pushed to their limits. But this was different. This was violence for sport, broadcast across the galaxy to billions of viewers who paid premium rates to watch beings tear each other apart. Human. The voice cracked like a whip. Marcus turned to see a tall, serpentine creature approaching. Its scales shifted from deep blue to purple as it moved, a sign of emotional state among the Nexari. This one seemed pleased about something. You are the Terran fighter, yes? Marcus Chun. That's me. Marcus kept his voice steady, professional. He'd learned long ago not to show weakness in front of predators, and despite the creature's polite tone, those yellow eyes held the cold calculation of someone who measured others in terms of profit and loss. Excellent. I am Seth, your handler for the duration of your stay. The Nexari's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air. The betting pools are quite active regarding your participation. Most fascinating odds, really. Would you like to know? Marcus shook his head. Not particularly. Seth's scales rippled with what might have been amusement. Humble. How refreshing. Most fighters demand to know their odds immediately. They want to understand how the galaxy views their chances of survival. The emphasis on the last word was subtle, but unmistakable. They walked through corridors lined with shops selling everything from neural enhancers to combat stims. Marcus noticed the prices were astronomical. A single dose of adrenaline booster cost more than most humans made in a month. But then, again, the prize money for arena champions could fund a small colony. Tell me about the other fighters, Marcus said as they passed a group of spectators gathered around a holographic display. On screen, a massive creature with 4 arms was methodically dismantling some kind of mechanical opponent. Ah, you wish to know your competition. Seth's tail swished behind him as they walked. Very wise. This cycle's tournament features some of the galaxy's finest killers. There is Thractor the Bone Crusher, a Vorthan who has never lost a match in 43 appearances. His favorite technique is to grab opponents by the spine and shake until something vital breaks. They passed another display showing a creature that looked like it was made of living shadow. It moved across the arena floor with impossible grace, leaving opponents frozen in terror before striking with tendrils of pure darkness. That lovely specimen is called Void Whisper. No one knows its true name or species. It appeared 5 cycles ago and has been undefeated since. Some say it feeds on fear itself. Others believe it comes from the dark spaces between stars. Seth paused in an intersection, considering which direction to take. Then, there is Razor Queen, a Kylix matriarch with 17 kills to her name. She prefers to take her time with opponents, making artistic patterns with their internal fluids. Marcus felt his stomach tighten slightly. He'd known this wouldn't be easy, but hearing the casual way Seth described these killers made the reality hit home. These weren't soldiers fighting for a cause or defending their homes. These were professional murderers who had turned killing into an art form. And the human contingent? Marcus asked. You are it. Seth's scales shifted to an amused yellow-green. Humans are considered a novelty species in the arena. Your kind has only been part of galactic civilization for what, 2 of your centuries? Most species had millions of years to evolve their fighting techniques before joining the community. Humans are seen as... He paused, searching for the right word, adorably primitive. The corridor opened into a massive viewing chamber with transparent aluminum walls that looked out into space. Hundreds of ships floated in the void around Nexus Station. Everything from single-person fighters to massive luxury cruisers. The wealthy came from across the galaxy to watch beings kill each other for sport. The preliminary matches begin tomorrow, Seth continued. You will face 3 opponents in succession. Survive all 3, and you advance to the secondary rounds. Fail. He left the sentence hanging. In my gear, standard arena regulations apply. No energy weapons, no advanced technology, no external augmentations. Weapons must be of traditional design, metal, ceramic, or organic compounds only. Armor follows the same restrictions. Seth led him through another corridor lined with training rooms. Through reinforced windows, Marcus could see various aliens practicing their combat techniques. In one room, a spider-like creature was weaving nets from its own silk while suspended from the ceiling. In another, something that looked like a walking boulder was practicing with what appeared to be a club made from a smaller boulder. The diversity was staggering, but Marcus noticed something interesting. Most of them were practicing techniques that relied on natural advantages. Enhanced strength, natural weapons, specialized abilities that had evolved over millions of years. Here we are, Seth announced as they stopped before a door marked with symbols Marcus couldn't read. Your quarters for the next 7 cycles. Meals will be provided according to human dietary requirements. Training facilities are available at all hours. Medical staff understands basic human physiology should you require attention. The room beyond was spartanly furnished, but comfortable enough. A bed suitable for human dimensions, a small food preparation area, and a view screen that currently showed the arena floor far below. Even from this height, Marcus could see the stains on the sand that marked where previous contestants had died. One more thing, Seth said as he prepared to leave. The audience here appreciates spectacle almost as much as they appreciate violence. A fighter who can provide both tends to live longer and earn more. Consider that as you prepare for tomorrow. Alone in his quarters, Marcus sat on the edge of the bed and stared out at the arena floor. He'd volunteered for this, though volunteer might be too strong a word. When the Terran Colonial Authority had received the invitation to send a representative to the Grand Arena Tournament, they'd made it clear that refusing would be seen as a sign of human weakness. In a galaxy where respect was often measured in blood, appearing weak could have consequences for all of humanity's colonies. So here he was, a former colonial marine turned gladiator, representing his entire species in a tournament where the mortality rate hovered around 80%. The prize money was substantial enough to fund several new colony ships, but that assumed he lived long enough to collect it. Marcus pulled up files on his tablet, studying everything the Terran intelligence services had been able to gather about previous tournaments. The patterns were consistent. Overwhelming force, natural advantages, and specialized abilities usually determined the winners. Humans had none of these things compared to the other species represented here. What humans did have was adaptability, creativity, and a stubborn refusal to give up when any rational being would surrender. Marcus had seen human soldiers take down aliens twice their size through sheer determination and tactical thinking. But those had been battles with modern weapons and equipment. This would be different. A chime from his door interrupted his thoughts. Outside stood a small, furry creature barely reaching his waist. Its large eyes blinked slowly as it spoke in accented galactic standard. Forgiveness for interruption. I am Pip, maintenance technician for fighter quarters. Also part-time information broker. The creature looked around nervously before continuing. Humans are curiosity among betting pools. Many believe you'll die quickly, but some remember stories. What kind of stories? Pip glanced around again, then stepped closer. Old stories. From First Contact Wars. When humans fought hegemony forces with primitive weapons and somehow won battles they should have lost. Stories of human marines boarding ships with nothing but metal weapons and defeating crews with energy weapons and powered armor. Marcus remembered those stories too. They'd become legends in human space. Tales of marines armed with combat knives, taking down aliens with plasma rifles through sheer audacity and tactical superiority. Most people assumed they were exaggerated war stories. Point is, Pip continued, some beings remember that humans fight differently. Not stronger, not faster, but he searched for the word. Unpredictable. This makes some bettors nervous. They place small wagers on human survival, just in case stories are true. The little creature scurried away, leaving Marcus with more questions than answers. But one thing was becoming clear. Expectations for human performance were so low that even surviving the first round would be considered a major upset. That night, Marcus dreamed of Earth. Rolling hills covered in grass that grew wild without genetic modification. Oceans that stretched to horizons unmarked by terraforming equipment. Skies that had never been artificially adjusted for optimal atmospheric composition. It was a world that billions of humans would never see, scattered as they were across dozens of colonial worlds. He woke before dawn, local time, and began his morning routine. Physical conditioning came first, push-ups, sit-ups, basic calisthenics that required no equipment. Then, weapons practice with training implements provided by the arena. The weight and balance were different from what he was used to, but his muscle memory adapted quickly. The viewing screen showed other fighters beginning their own preparations. Most seemed to focus on displays of raw power or showcasing their natural abilities. Marcus took notes, studying their movements, looking for patterns or weaknesses he might exploit. Around midday, another chime announced a visitor. This time it was a tall, elegant being with elongated limbs and skin that seemed to shimmer like oil on water. Its eyes were completely black, showing no iris or pupil. "Greetings, human. I am Ambassador Valeth of the Collective. I come bearing an offer." Marcus gestured for the ambassador to enter, though he remained standing. "What kind of offer?" "A simple one. Withdraw from the tournament now, cite injury or personal reasons, and the Collective will ensure your safe passage home, along with compensation equivalent to what you might have earned reaching the secondary rounds." "And why would you want me to do that?" Valeth's head tilted in what might have been amusement. "Because your presence here serves no useful purpose. You will die in the first or second round, providing nothing more than brief entertainment before being forgotten. This benefits no one, least of all your species." Marcus studied the ambassador's face, looking for tells. The offer seemed genuine, but the reasoning felt incomplete. "There's something you're not telling me," he said. "Perhaps." Valeth's skin shimmered more rapidly. "Perhaps some of us remember the colonial wars as well. Perhaps we prefer humans to remain predictably weak rather than remind the galaxy of what your species is capable of when properly motivated." The ambassador left without waiting for an answer, but his words lingered. Marcus was beginning to understand that his presence here represented more than just a single fighter in a tournament. To some beings, he was a test case, proof that humans were no threat to established galactic power structures. To others, he might represent something more dangerous. That evening, the arena held a pre-tournament exhibition. All contestants were required to appear and give the audience a preview of their capabilities. Marcus watched from the staging area as fighter after fighter demonstrated their abilities. Thractor lifted a 3-ton block of stone over his head and hurled it across the arena floor, where it shattered against the far wall. The crowd roared approval. Void Whisper simply stood in the center of the arena as darkness seemed to flow from its form, creating shapes that moved independently through the air before dissolving back into shadow. When Marcus's name was called, he walked into the arena to a much more subdued response. Some scattered cheering from what sounded like humans in the crowd, but mostly curious murmurs and a few derisive laughs. "Human fighter Marcus Chun," the announcer's voice boomed through the stadium, representing the Terran species in their first appearance at the Grand Tournament. "Let us see what this primitive warrior can offer." Marcus stood in the center of the arena and drew the practice sword he'd been given. It was a simple weapon, 2 feet of steel with a basic grip. No energy cells, no molecular edge, no advanced materials. Just metal shaped by skilled hands. Then he began to move. It wasn't a demonstration of raw power or alien abilities. Instead, Marcus showed something the galaxy hadn't seen in an arena before: pure technical skill combined with tactical thinking. He moved through a series of forms that demonstrated not just sword work, but adaptation. He showed how the same basic techniques could be modified instantly to deal with opponents of different sizes, reach, and attack patterns. As he moved, he spoke, his voice carrying through the arena's sound system. "Every being here is stronger than me, faster, has natural weapons I lack, abilities I could never match." His sword moved in precise arcs, demonstrating defensive positions and counterattacks. "But I've studied every one of them. I know how they fight, how they think, what they expect from an opponent." He paused in the center of the arena, sword held in a ready position that could transition instantly to offense or defense. They expect me to fight like them, to rely on advantages I don't have, to play by rules that favor their natural gifts. Marcus smiled, and something in that expression made several aliens in the front rows shift uncomfortably. But humans don't fight fair. We fight smart. We adapt. We survive. The arena fell silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, a strange thing happened. The betting pools, displayed on screens throughout the stadium, began to shift. Not dramatically. Humans were still overwhelming underdogs. But enough to show that some beings in the audience were beginning to recalculate their assumptions. As Marcus walked back to the staging area, he heard Seth's voice behind him. Interesting approach. You've managed to make some beings nervous without actually demonstrating any superhuman abilities. Quite the psychological gambit. Marcus didn't reply, but he noticed that several other fighters were now watching him with expressions that hadn't been there before. Not fear exactly, but a new wariness. They were beginning to realize that the primitive human might not be quite as easy to kill as they'd assumed. Tomorrow, the real tournament would begin, and Marcus Chun, representing all of humanity in a galaxy that viewed his species as entertainingly weak, would find out if human adaptability and tactical thinking could overcome natural advantages that had evolved over millions of years. The arena had cheered his arrival, but Marcus suspected that by the time he was finished, the cheering might sound very different indeed. The first match began at what the station's chronometers marked as 0800 Standard Galactic Time. Marcus had been awake for 3 hours, running through mental preparations and equipment checks. His assigned gear sat on the preparation table, a steel sword, a composite shield, and basic armor that covered his torso and limbs without restricting movement. Around him, other fighters made their own preparations. Some prayed to alien gods in languages that hurt to hear. Others consumed chemical enhancers that were legal under arena regulations. A few simply sat in meditative silence, conserving energy for the battles ahead. First preliminary match, the announcement echoed through the staging area. Human fighter Marcus Chun versus Scarix the Render. Marcus had studied his first opponent during the previous night's research session. Scarix belonged to a species called the Thok-Hai, bipedal reptilians with natural armor plating and razor-sharp claws that could slice through most metals. They were ambush predators by evolution, preferring to strike fast and hard before their prey could react. The crowd's roar washed over him as he entered the arena. 20,000 beings from across the galaxy had packed the stadium, with billions more watching via live feeds broadcast to every civilized system. Marcus could see the betting displays updating in real time. Odds against human survival sat at approximately 30-1. Scarix emerged from the opposite entrance with a theatrical flourish, his natural armor gleaming under the arena lights. He stood 8 feet tall and moved with the fluid grace of a born killer. His claws extended with audible clicks as he raised his arms to acknowledge the crowd's approval. Begin. The referee's voice cut through the noise. Scarix moved exactly as Marcus had expected, a straight-line charge designed to close distance quickly and overwhelm his opponent with superior reach and natural weapons. It was an effective strategy that had worked in 17 previous arena victories. Marcus sidestepped at the last possible moment, pivoting on his left foot while bringing his shield up to deflect the alien's claws. Instead of trying to match Scarix's strength, he redirected the attack's momentum, using the alien's own speed against him. Scarix stumbled past, confused by the lack of impact he'd expected. He spun quickly, claws extended, but found Marcus had moved again, not retreating as most opponents did, but circling to maintain optimal positioning. "Fight human," Scarix hissed, in accented galactic standard. "Stop running." Marcus said nothing. He learned long ago that talking during combat was usually a waste of breath and concentration. Instead, he watched, analyzed, and waited for his opportunity. The second attack came faster, with Scarix having adjusted for Marcus's mobility. But adaptation worked both ways. As the alien committed to a wide swipe with his left claw, Marcus ducked low and drove his sword upward, finding the gap where Scarix's natural armor plates met at the shoulder joint. The blade slid between plates and found flesh. Not a killing blow, but enough to limit the alien's left arm mobility. Dark blue blood dripped onto the arena sand as Scarix roared in pain and surprise. Impossible. Scarix's eyes widened. Humans cannot penetrate thigh-high armor. Your armor is designed to stop frontal attacks. Marcus replied calmly, circling again. Most predators attack head-on, but humans learn to hunt in groups using coordinated tactics and precision strikes. The crowd's noise shifted. The easy kill they'd expected wasn't materializing. Instead, they were watching something unprecedented, a human systematically dismantling a natural predator through pure tactical thinking. Scarix became more cautious, favoring his injured arm while using his good claws to probe Marcus's defenses. But caution worked against him. His species had evolved for quick kills, not extended combat. The longer the fight continued, the more advantages shifted to the human. Marcus pressed his advantage, using his shield to control angles of attack while his sword found gap after gap in Scarix's natural armor. The alien's blood loss mounted steadily. More importantly, his confidence was cracking. This cannot be happening, Scarix muttered, his breathing becoming labored. Humans are weak. Soft. Prey animals. We were prey once, Marcus agreed, dodging another increasingly desperate swipe. That's why we learned to think our way out of problems instead of just using brute force. The end came suddenly. Scarix overextended himself in a wild attack, leaving his neck exposed for a fraction of a second. Marcus's sword found the gap at the base of the alien's skull, severing the spinal cord with surgical precision. Scarix collapsed, his nervous system shutting down instantly. He was dead before he hit the arena floor. The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then, the crowd exploded into noise, some cheering the unexpected victory, others expressing outrage that their bets had failed so spectacularly. Marcus simply cleaned his blade and walked toward the exit. Astounding. The announcer's voice carried over the crowd. In a stunning upset, the human fighter has defeated Scarix the Render. This marks the first time a thigh-high warrior has fallen to what was considered a technologically primitive species. In the staging area, other fighters watched Marcus with new interest. The casual dismissal was gone, replaced by professional assessment. If a human could kill Scarix, what else might they be capable of? Seth approached as Marcus cleaned his equipment. The Nexary's scales showed deep purple, surprise mixed with calculation. Remarkable performance. The betting pools are in chaos. Would you care to know your new odds for the second match? Marcus shook his head. He wasn't fighting for the money or the glory. He was here to prove that humans belonged in a galaxy that still saw them as newcomers barely worthy of notice. Your second opponent has been selected, Seth continued. Vexthera of the Crimson Hive. She is, he paused, considerably more challenging than Scarix. Marcus had studied Vexthera as well. The insectoid alien possessed 4 arms, natural chitinous armor that could deflect most blade weapons, and the ability to secret paralytic toxins through specialized glands. She'd killed 12 opponents in her arena career, preferring to paralyze them before taking her time with the finishing blows. How long until the next match? 2 hours. Standard rest period. Seth's tail swished thoughtfully. I should mention that several other fighters have requested information about human combat techniques. Your performance has generated considerable interest. The second match drew an even larger crowd. Word had spread throughout the station that the human had actually won his first fight, and beings who hadn't initially planned to attend were now purchasing tickets at premium prices. Vexthera entered the arena to thunderous applause. She stood 7 feet tall on 4 legs, with her additional arms ending in hands that could manipulate weapons with disturbing dexterity. Her chitinous armor had a glossy black sheen that reflected the arena lights. So she clicked in perfectly modulated galactic standard. The soft skin thinks it can fight. I will enjoy showing you why insects inherited the galaxy while mammals remained in trees. Marcus checked his equipment one final time. The sword felt comfortable in his hands now, and the shield's weight was perfectly balanced for his fighting style. More importantly, he'd observed something during Vexthera's previous matches that might prove useful. Begin. Unlike Scarix's direct charge, Vexthera approached cautiously. Her species had evolved as pack hunters, preferring to test opponents before committing to full attacks. She wielded 2 curved blades that looked like enlarged versions of her natural claws. Marcus let her come, maintaining a defensive posture while studying her movement patterns. Insects were faster and more agile than most mammals, but they also had predictable neural responses that governed their reactions. The first exchange was brief, a testing of reach and reflexes. Vexthara's blades moved in complex patterns, probing for weaknesses while staying clear of counterattacks. But Marcus noticed something interesting. Her natural armor was strongest frontally, and her additional arms gave her superior reach, but her articulation was limited by her exoskeleton. "You fight like prey," Vexthara taunted, her mandibles clicking. "All defense, no aggression. This is why mammals make poor warriors." Marcus shifted his stance slightly, presenting what appeared to be an opening near his right shoulder. Vexthara took the bait, driving one of her blades toward the perceived weakness. But the opening was deliberate. As Vexthara committed to the attack, Marcus twisted away from the blade while bringing a shield up hard under her extended arm. The impact threw off her balance just enough to leave her momentarily vulnerable. His sword found a joint where her left rear leg connected to her torso, another gap in natural armor that most opponents never thought to target. Vexthara chittered in pain as yellow fluid leaked from the wound. "Impossible. You cannot know insectoid anatomy. Humans have been studying insect behavior for thousands of years," Marcus replied, circling to keep her injured leg under stress. "We learned to exploit their weaknesses long before we reached the stars." The crowd was on its feet now. Betting pools shifted wildly as odds recalculated in real time. What had been expected as easy entertainment was becoming something unprecedented, a systematic demonstration of human tactical thinking. Vexthara became more aggressive, using all four arms to press her attack. But aggression without adaptation was just desperation in disguise. Marcus had identified her patterns now, and he exploited them ruthlessly. A cut across her right arm joint limited her blade work. A strike to her forward left leg made her stance unstable. Each wound was precisely placed, chosen to degrade her combat effectiveness rather than simply cause pain. "Stop toying with me." Vexthara's voice carried a note of panic now. "Fight properly." "I'm fighting properly," Marcus said, dodging another increasingly wild swing. For a human, the final sequence lasted only seconds. Vexthara overcommit to a four-armed assault, putting all her remaining strength into an attack designed to overwhelm any defense. Marcus stepped inside her reach instead of away from it, getting close enough that her longer weapons became liabilities. His sword found the gap between her head and thorax, severing vital nerve clusters with surgical precision. Vexthara's attack stopped mid-swing as her nervous system shut down. The arena erupted. 2 fights, 2 victories, both achieved through tactical superiority rather than physical dominance. In the VIP sections, ambassadors and military observers from dozens of species were taking urgent notes. Ambassador Valeth watched from his private box, his skin shimmering rapidly through spectrum of colors that indicated deep concern. The human wasn't just winning. He was demonstrating combat capabilities that challenged fundamental assumptions about human limitations. "Third match in 4 hours," Seth announced as Marcus returned to the staging area. "Your final preliminary opponent will be Korax the Devastator, a hegemony veteran with 47 kills. He specifically requested to face you after watching your previous matches." Marcus nodded, unsurprised. Korax was a professional soldier turned gladiator, representing one of the galaxy's most militarily advanced species. His victories came from superior equipment use and tactical discipline rather than just natural advantages. "He'll be different from the others," Marcus observed. "Indeed, Korax fights like a human might if humans possessed natural energy projection abilities and enhanced physical capabilities." Seth's scales showed yellow concern. "The betting pools consider this your most dangerous match by far." In the fighter preparation areas, Korax was conducting his own equipment checks. The 9-foot humanoid possessed gray skin that could absorb energy attacks and redirect them through specialized organs. His species had dominated local space for millennia through superior technology and tactical thinking. "Bring me everything the databases contain on human combat doctrine," he commanded his support team. "If this primitive is defeating skilled opponents, there must be principles we're missing." But the databases contained relatively little. Humans were too new to galactic civilization, and most of their military actions have been dismissed as lucky accidents by established powers. The colonial wars were briefly mentioned, but analysis focused on human technology rather than tactical innovation. Korax studied the available footage from Marcus's previous matches. The human moved well, demonstrated excellent timing, and showed remarkable ability to identify and exploit weaknesses. But these were skills any competent fighter might possess. What bothered Korax was something less tangible. The human fought as if he knew something his opponents didn't. Not specific knowledge about their anatomy or abilities, but some fundamental principle that gave him consistent advantages despite obvious physical inferiority. The third match drew capacity crowds throughout the station. Word had spread beyond the arena that something unprecedented was happening. A primitive human was not just surviving, but dominating opponents that should have killed him easily. Marcus entered the arena to find the crowd's energy different from his previous matches. There was still bloodlust, but now it was mixed with genuine curiosity. They weren't just watching for entertainment anymore. They were trying to understand how someone so apparently limited could achieve such results. Korax entered from the opposite side, his movements precise and controlled. He carried an energy lance that could extend to various lengths and project force bolts at short range. His armor was traditional metal and ceramic, but fitted with power cells that could enhance his natural abilities. Human, Korax nodded respectfully. I've studied your previous encounters. You fight with intelligence and skill. This will be an honor. Marcus returned the nod. Here was an opponent who understood combat as more than just violence. Someone who might actually appreciate the principles behind human tactical thinking. Begin. Korax started cautiously, using his energy lance at maximum extension to probe Marcus's defenses from well outside sword range. Force bolts crackled through the air, testing reaction times and movement patterns. Marcus deflected what he could with his shield while dodging the rest, but he was clearly at a significant disadvantage. Korax had superior reach, ranged attacks, and the tactical knowledge to use both effectively. But Marcus had something Korax didn't expect: patience. Instead of trying to close distance immediately, he circled, observed, and waited for patterns to emerge. The energy lance required power cells that had finite capacity. The force bolts followed predictable trajectories based on Korax's body position. Most importantly, Korax was fighting like a hegemony soldier, efficiently, effectively, but according to established doctrine. Marcus let the fight continue for several minutes, absorbing punishment while studying his opponent. Several force bolts struck home despite his defenses, leaving burn marks on his armor and drawing concerned murmurs from the crowd. Then he began to adapt. Instead of simply dodging the force bolts, Marcus started moving in patterns that forced Korax to waste shots on low-percentage targets. When the alien tried to close distance for more accurate attacks, Marcus used terrain features, scattered arena obstacles, to break line of sight and force positional resets. Interesting tactics, Korax observed, but ultimately futile. You cannot reach me, and my power cells can sustain this rate of fire for considerable time. Marcus said nothing, but continued his patient circling. He was counting shots, timing intervals between attacks, mapping the precise parameters of Korax's capabilities. When he finally moved, it was with explosive speed and perfect timing. Korax's power cells recycled between shots at precise intervals. Marcus had identified the gap and used it. He closed half the distance during one recycling period, used a shield to deflect the next shot while continuing to advance, then reached effective range just as Korax's lance powered down for another recharge cycle. But instead of attacking directly, Marcus did something unexpected. He threw his shield. The spinning composite disc struck Korax in the chest, not hard enough to cause serious damage, but sufficient to disrupt his stance and delay his next shot. In that moment of disruption, Marcus closed the remaining distance. The fight became brutal and personal. Korax had superior strength and reach even without his energy weapons, but Marcus had learned something about hegemony fighting techniques from studying colonial war records. They fought according to doctrine, efficient, effective, but predictable. Their training emphasized overwhelming force and superior equipment. They weren't prepared for opponents who deliberately accepted short-term disadvantages to create long-term opportunities. Marcus took risks that made the crowd gasp. He absorbed hits that should have ended the fight in order to position himself for more effective counters. He traded pain for position, injury for opportunity. When his sword finally found its mark, sliding between Korax's armor plates to pierce his primary heart, the alien looked surprised rather than afraid. "Ow!" Korax whispered as he fell. "Your species lacks our advantages. How do you consistently win?" Marcus knelt beside the dying warrior. "We learn to fight things bigger and stronger than ourselves. Every predator on our world was faster, stronger, or better armed. So we learned to think our way out of problems." Korax nodded, understanding as his eyes dimmed. Evolution through adversity. Fascinating. The crowd's reaction was different this time. Less celebration, more stunned silence. They just watched a human defeat one of the galaxy's premier warrior species through what could only be described as superior tactical thinking. In VIP sections throughout the arena, military observers were revising their assessments of human capabilities. If one human with primitive equipment could defeat trained hegemony soldiers, what could human military units accomplish with proper support? Marcus walked out of the arena to find the staging area buzzing with activity. Other fighters studied him with expressions ranging from professional interest to outright concern. News feeds throughout the galaxy were reporting the unprecedented results. "Remarkable," Seth said, his scales cycling through colors Marcus had never seen before. "You've advanced to the secondary rounds." The betting pools have shifted so dramatically that several major financial institutions are conducting investigations. More importantly, Marcus could see that other beings were beginning to view humans differently, not as entertainingly primitive newcomers, but as a potential threat that had been systematically underestimated. The arena had cheered his arrival, but as Marcus prepared for the next phase of the tournament, he was beginning to understand that his individual victories were having consequences far beyond personal glory or prize money. He was changing how the galaxy viewed humanity itself, and that might prove more dangerous than any opponent he would face in the arena. The secondary rounds began with a ceremony that Marcus found deeply unsettling. Representatives from 16 different species offered prayers to their respective deities, asking for either victory in combat or honor in death. The pageantry was elaborate, but underneath the ritual lay the simple reality that half the remaining contestants would die in the next phase of competition. Marcus stood among the survivors, studying his fellow competitors with new understanding. The preliminary rounds had eliminated the careless, the overconfident, and the simply unlucky. What remained were professional killers who had survived not just their initial matches, but years of combat across the galaxy's premier arenas. Thractor the Bone Crusher towered above the other contestants, his massive Vorthan physique making even the largest aliens look small by comparison. His preliminary victories had been exercises in brutal efficiency, opponents crushed so quickly that medical teams barely had time to reach the arena floor. Void Whisper remained an enigma, its shadowy form seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. During its matches, opponents had simply stopped fighting, standing motionless while tendrils of darkness explored their bodies until vital functions ceased. Medical scanners couldn't determine the cause of death. Razor Queen displayed the casual elegance that had made the Kylek species so feared throughout the outer systems. Her claws could slice through most materials with molecular precision, and she moved with a grace that made violence look like performance art. The secondary round format is different, Seth explained as they walked through corridors that had been cleared of all spectators. No longer individual matches. Instead, team combat scenarios designed to test adaptability and tactical thinking. Marcus felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Teams. Randomly selected. 3 contestants per team. Multiple teams competing simultaneously in dynamic environments. Survival depends on both individual skill and group coordination. Seth's scales shifted to concern blue. It's considerably more complex than simple gladiatorial combat. The arena floor had been transformed into a sprawling environment that resembled a ruined city. Buildings rose to varying heights, connected by bridges and tunnels that created multiple levels of engagement. Obstacles and cover provided tactical opportunities for those smart enough to use them. Team assignments are now complete. The announcer's voice echoed through the complex. Team Alpha consists of Thractor, Sylvanix the Phantom Blade, and Marcus Chun of Terra. Team Beta includes Void Whisper, Karthok the Living Weapon, and Zella of the Crimson Tide. Marcus found himself studying his teammates with mixed feelings. Sylvanix belonged to a species he'd never encountered before, tall, ethereally thin beings with 4 arms and natural camouflage abilities that made them excellent scouts and assassins. The alien nodded acknowledgement, but said nothing. Thractor grinned, showing teeth designed for crushing bone. Human, your preliminary victories were impressive. Let us see how you fare in real combat. The Vorthan's confidence wasn't entirely misplaced. His species had evolved as pack hunters on a world where individual strength mattered less than group coordination. Unlike many arena fighters who specialized in individual combat, Thractor understood teamwork. What are our opponent's capabilities? Marcus asked, studying the arena layout while they waited for the match to begin. Void Whisper you have observed. Sylvanix spoke in a voice like wind through leaves. Its nature remains unknown, but it appears to feed on neural energy. Direct mental contact proves fatal. Karthok is a cybernetic hybrid, Thractor added. Part biological, part machine. His mechanical components can interface with arena systems, giving him control over environmental elements like doors and lighting. And Zella, aquatic specialist. Her species can survive in multiple atmospheric conditions and secretes paralytic compounds through skin contact. Dangerous in close combat. Marcus nodded, processing the tactical implications. Their opponents represented a mix of supernatural abilities, technological advantages, and biological specialization. His team would need to coordinate carefully to avoid being picked off individually. Begin. The match started with each team positioned at opposite ends of the arena complex. Unlike the preliminary rounds, there was no single defined combat area. The entire environment was active, with multiple routes and engagement zones. Marcus immediately took point, using his tactical experience to map potential approaches while his teammates provided overwatch. The key would be controlling engagements, forcing opponents to fight on terms that favored Team Alpha. Sylvanix, can you scout their positions without being detected? The ethereal alien flickered and seemed to fade partially from view. Already moving. Maintain current position until I report. Thractor hefted his massive war hammer, eager for direct confrontation. Why not advance immediately? Strike before they organize? Because Karthok will have interfaced with arena systems by now, Marcus explained, studying the tactical display. If we move predictably, he'll trap us in corridors or cut off our retreat routes. Sylvanix's voice came through their communication system. Human assessment is correct. Karthok has assumed control of the Eastern Corridor network. Void Whisper has positioned itself in the Central Plaza. Zella is moving through the lower levels, likely attempting to flank. Marcus smiled grimly. His opponents were fighting as individuals despite being designated as a team. Each was using their natural abilities independently rather than coordinating their advantages. New plan. Thractor, make noise in the Western approach. Draw their attention and make them think we're advancing directly. Sylvanix, can you reach the arena's environmental controls? Possibly. What do you require? Atmospheric processors. If Zella needs specific atmospheric conditions, we can make the environment uncomfortable for her. Marcus checked his equipment while explaining. I'll approach through the lower levels while they're distracted by Thractor's advance. It was a risky plan that relied on precise timing and coordination. But it also played to their strengths while exploiting their opponent's tendency to fight as individuals. Thractor's assault on the western approach was magnificently loud. The massive Vorthan smashed through obstacles with his war hammer, roaring challenges in his native language while making no attempt at stealth. Arena speakers carried his voice throughout the complex, making it seem like an entire army was approaching. Sylvanix disappeared into the arena's maintenance systems, using abilities that let his species access areas designed for automated equipment. Within minutes, he'd reached environmental controls and begun adjusting atmospheric composition. Marcus moved through the lower tunnels, using passages designed for maintenance crews rather than combatants. His route was longer, but provided concealment while his opponents focused on more obvious approaches. The plan worked better than expected. Zella, uncomfortable in the changing atmospheric conditions, moved upward to escape the lower levels. She emerged directly into Marcus's path, apparently unaware that Team Alpha had split up. The aquatic alien was formidable in her preferred environment, but the modified atmosphere left her sluggish and disoriented. Marcus engaged her quickly, using superior reach and the environmental advantage to avoid her paralytic secretions. The fight was brief but decisive. Zella's specialized abilities were useless when she couldn't make skin contact, and her natural armor provided little protection against precisely placed sword strikes. She died confused and far from the waterworld environments where her species dominated. First elimination achieved, Marcus reported through communications, moving to support Thractor. But his teammate needed less help than expected. When Marcus reached the central plaza, he found Thractor engaged in brutal close combat with Karthok. The cybernetic hybrid's mechanical components gave him superior strength and speed, but Thractor's experience in pack hunting had taught him to exploit technological weaknesses. The Vorthan's war hammer struck with enough force to damage Karthok's mechanical components. Sparks flew as systems failed, and servomotors seized up. The hybrid's technological advantages became liabilities as damaged equipment interfered with his remaining biological functions. Sylvanix, where's Void Whisper? Marcus called while moving to flank Karthok. Unknown. It vanished from my sensors when the atmospheric processors activated, possibly affected by environmental changes. The elimination of Karthok was methodical rather than dramatic. Damaged technology left him vulnerable to coordinated attacks from Marcus and Thractor. His death came when Marcus's sword found gaps in his cybernetic armor, while Thractor's hammer destroyed his primary processing unit. That left only Void Whisper, somewhere in the arena complex. It feeds on neural energy, Marcus said, thinking aloud. If the atmospheric changes affected it, maybe it needs specific conditions to maintain its abilities. Logical, Sylvanix reported from his position near environmental controls. Atmospheric composition can affect bioelectric fields. Shall I continue adjustments? Negative. It might adapt if we give it time. Marcus studied the arena layout, looking for patterns. Where would something that feeds on neural energy position itself for maximum advantage? The answer came to him suddenly. The central tower. Highest point, maximum sensor range, clear lines of approach for mental contact. They found Void Whisper exactly where Marcus predicted, but the entity was clearly struggling. The atmospheric changes had disrupted whatever process it used to feed on neural energy. Its shadowy form flickered and wavered, losing the solid presence it had shown in previous matches. The final engagement was unlike anything the arena had seen before. Void Whisper's attacks were largely ineffective in the modified environment, but its defensive capabilities remained formidable. Physical attacks seemed to pass through its form without causing damage. Marcus tried a different approach. Instead of attacking Void Whisper directly, he began destroying the environmental systems that maintain the central tower's atmospheric conditions. If the entity needed specific environmental parameters, removing those parameters might prove more effective than direct violence. The strategy worked. As atmospheric conditions in the tower normalized, Void Whisper's form became more solid and vulnerable. Thractor's hammer found purchase, and Marcus's sword began drawing whatever passed for blood in the entity's physiology. Void Whisper's death was strange even by arena standards. Instead of simply falling, it seemed to dissolve back into the shadows from which it had emerged. Its final words were barely audible. Impossible. Your species should not be able to coordinate such tactics. The crowd's reaction to Team Alpha's victory was unprecedented. They hadn't just won. They dominated a match that was supposed to test the limits of even professional fighters. More importantly, they'd done it through tactical coordination that most species considered beyond human capabilities. In the staging area, other surviving contestants watched Marcus with new respect. The casual dismissal was gone, replaced by the wariness that professional warriors showed toward legitimate threats. Remarkable teamwork, Seth observed, his scales cycling through colors Marcus had learned indicated deep thought. Your coordination exceeded expectations for human tactical capabilities. We've had practice, Marcus replied, cleaning his sword while reviewing the match in his mind. Humans have been coordinating group tactics longer than most species have been sentient. But even as he spoke, Marcus was aware that their victory had consequences beyond advancing to the next round. Throughout the galaxy, military analysts were studying recordings of the match, trying to understand how a supposedly primitive species had outmaneuvered opponents with superior individual capabilities. Ambassador Valeth appeared in the staging area within an hour, his skin shimmering with agitation. "Human, we need to discuss your continued participation." Marcus looked up from his equipment maintenance. "Let me guess. Another offer to withdraw gracefully. More than an offer. A formal request from the Galactic Council of Species. Your victories are causing complications." "What kind of complications?" Valeth's skin shifted to deep purple. "Several member species are questioning previous assessments of human military capabilities. If individual humans can achieve such results in combat, what might human military units accomplish with proper support and coordination?" Marcus set down his sword and gave the ambassador his full attention. "Are you saying the Council is afraid of humans?" "I'm saying the Council values stability. The current galactic balance of power is based on established assessments of each species' capabilities. Your performance suggests those assessments regarding humans may be incomplete." For the first time since arriving at the arena, Marcus truly understood what was at stake. His individual victories weren't just personal achievements. They were changing how the galaxy viewed humanity's potential role in galactic civilization. "What if I refuse to withdraw?" "Then, you continue to the final rounds, where you will face opponents specifically chosen to demonstrate human limitations." Valeth's skin flickered rapid color changes. "Opponents who will not underestimate human tactical capabilities." Marcus considered the implications. The preliminary rounds had eliminated overconfident opponents. The secondary rounds had tested coordination and adaptability. The final rounds would feature opponents who understood human capabilities and had prepared accordingly. Who would I face? Razor Queen, for certain. She has studied recordings of all your matches and specifically requested the opportunity to face you. Beyond that, Valeth's skin settled into worried gray. The tournament organizers are considering special arrangements, such as modified rules, environmental conditions that favor non-human physiology, opponents equipped with specific counters to observe human tactics. Valeth stepped closer. They want to ensure that human capabilities are properly contextualized. Marcus smiled, and something in that expression made the ambassador step back. "Let me understand this correctly. The galaxy's premier combat tournament is being modified specifically to defeat one human fighter. To provide proper perspective on human capabilities, yes. And if I win anyway?" Valeth's skin went completely black. "That would create complications beyond my ability to predict." That evening, Marcus sat in his quarters reviewing everything he'd learned about his remaining opponents. Razor Queen was formidable, but her fighting style followed predictable patterns. The real challenge would be whatever special arrangements the tournament organizers had planned. A soft chime announced another visitor. This time it was Pip, the small maintenance technician who had visited him before the preliminary rounds. "Forgiveness for intrusion," Pip squeaked nervously. "But information has come to attention the human fighter should know." Marcus gestured for the creature to enter. "What kind of information?" "Tournament organizers have made modifications to arena systems. Environmental controls, obstacle placement, even rules of engagement." Pip's large eyes blinked rapidly. "All designed to counter observed human tactics. And you're telling me this because some of us remember what Galaxy was like before hegemony in force current power structures. Some of us think maybe time has come for changes." Pip moved closer, lowering his voice. "Betting pools are not only place where patterns can be observed." Marcus studied the small alien, beginning to understand. His victories weren't just entertainment. They were inspiring other species to reconsider their place in galactic civilization. "What kind of modification should I expect?" Pip pulled out a small device that projected holographic images. "Arena floor will use variable gravity fields to negate human mobility advantages. Atmospheric composition will be adjusted to favor non-oxygen breathing species. Weapons restrictions will be modified to allow energy weapons against humans while prohibiting them for human use. And you have access to this information because maintenance technicians install modifications, but are often forgotten by those who order them." Pip's expression might have been a smile. Sometimes forgotten people see things that important people miss. As Pip left, Marcus realized that his individual battle had become something larger. He wasn't just fighting for prize money or personal glory anymore. He was fighting to prove that humans deserved respect in a galaxy that had consistently underestimated them. The final rounds would be different from everything that had come before. His opponents would be prepared, the environment would be hostile, and the rules would be stacked against him. But Marcus had learned something important during his time at the arena. Humans didn't win through superior individual capabilities. They won by adapting faster than their opponents could adjust, by finding new solutions when old ones stopped working. The arena had cheered his arrival. Tomorrow, he would find out if they would still be cheering when he left. The morning of the final rounds brought changes that confirmed everything Pip had warned about. Arena staff escorted Marcus to a new preparation facility where equipment restrictions had been modified specifically for his matches. Energy weapons were now permitted for his opponents, while remaining prohibited for human contestants. Environmental controls would maintain atmospheric conditions optimal for non-oxygen breathers. The tournament committee has decided that previous rounds may not have provided adequate representation of galactic combat capabilities. Seth explained, his scales showing colors Marcus had learned indicated discomfort with the situation. These modifications are intended to provide more realistic assessment of relative fighting abilities. Marcus tested his assigned equipment, the same steel sword and composite shield he'd used throughout the tournament, but now facing opponents with technological advantages that hadn't been permitted in earlier rounds. The message was clear. The galaxy wanted to put humans back in their proper place. Who am I fighting first? Razor Queen, as expected. But the format has changed again. Seth consulted his datapad. Instead of single elimination, the final round will be a tournament within the tournament. You'll face each remaining opponent in succession. Defeat all three, and you win the championship. Lose any match, and you're eliminated. All three in one session, with minimal rest periods between matches. Your opponents will enter fresh while you carry forward any injuries or fatigue from previous encounters. Seth's scales rippled with what might have been sympathy. It's designed to test endurance as much as skill. Marcus nodded, unsurprised. The tournament organizers had abandoned any pretense of fairness. They wanted to demonstrate human limitations so clearly that no one could question the result. The arena floor had been reconfigured once again, this time as a circular combat space with no obstacles or environmental advantages. Just flat ground under modified atmospheric conditions that would favor his non-human opponents. The crowd was larger than ever. Beings from across the galaxy had come to witness what many expected to be a definitive demonstration of where humans ranked in galactic hierarchy. Razor Queen entered to thunderous applause, her chitinous armor gleaming under lights that had been adjusted to wavelengths optimal for her visual range. She carried weapons Marcus had never seen before, energy blades that could extend to variable lengths and cut through most known materials. Human, she acknowledged with a graceful nod. I have studied your previous encounters with great interest. You fight with intelligence and adaptation. This will be educational. Marcus appreciated her honesty. Unlike his preliminary opponents, Razor Queen understood exactly what she was facing. She'd analyzed his tactics, identified his patterns, and prepared accordingly. Begin. The fight started differently than any of his previous matches. Instead of testing his defenses or probing for weaknesses, Razor Queen immediately pressed a full assault. Her energy blades moved in patterns designed to overwhelm human reaction times while exploiting the reach advantage her weapons provided. Marcus found himself purely defensive for the first minute, using every technique he'd learned to avoid being cut to pieces. Razor Queen fought with the precision of a master surgeon, combined with the lethality of a natural predator. Her movements were economical, efficient, and utterly professional. But as the fight continued, Marcus began to notice patterns. Razor Queen was fighting like a duelist. Perfect technique, flawless execution, but following established forms that had been developed over millions of years of evolution. She was doing everything correctly according to her species' martial traditions. Marcus had no such traditions to constrain him. Human combat doctrine had been developed over mere centuries, which meant it remained flexible and adaptive rather than locked into evolutionary patterns. When he finally began his counterattack, it came from angles Razor Queen hadn't expected. Instead of trying to match her technique, Marcus fought like what he was, a soldier trained to win battles rather than demonstrate martial artistry. He used a shield not just defensively, but as a weapon, striking at joints and pressure points while creating openings for his sword. He deliberately took minor hits to deliver more significant damage in return. Most importantly, he fought unpredictably, abandoning established patterns whenever Razor Queen began to anticipate them. Fascinating. Razor Queen observed as they circled each other, both breathing hard. "You fight without honor." "I fight to win," Marcus replied. "Honor is for people who can afford to lose." The crowd's reaction was mixed, some appreciating the technical skill being displayed, others expressing displeasure at Marcus's unconventional tactics. But in the VIP sections, military observers were taking careful notes about human combat doctrine. The end came suddenly. Razor Queen committed to a perfect killing strike, her energy blade positioned to slice through Marcus's neck with molecular precision. It was a flawless attack that should have ended the fight instantly. But Marcus did something no one expected. Instead of dodging or blocking, he stepped forward into the attack, accepting a glancing blow across his shoulder while getting inside Razor Queen's reach. His sword found her primary heart before she could adjust to his unexpected response. "Impossible," she whispered as she fell. "That should have killed you." "Probably," Marcus agreed, examining the burn across his shoulder. "But definitely would have killed you." The crowd fell silent. They just watched a human deliberately accept what should have been a fatal attack in order to deliver his own killing blow. It was a level of tactical thinking and risk acceptance that challenged fundamental assumptions about human limitations. "Second match will begin in 30 minutes, the announcer declared. Human fighter Marcus Chun will face Gorvok, the World Breaker. Marcus used the brief rest period to receive medical attention for his shoulder wound. The injury was painful but not incapacitating, though it would limit his mobility in the upcoming fight. Gorvok represented a different kind of challenge entirely. The massive humanoid stood 12 feet tall and possessed natural armor that could withstand most conventional weapons. His species had evolved on a high-gravity world where physical strength was the primary survival trait. "Human," Gorvok rumbled as he entered the arena, his voice like grinding stone. "I have watched your fights. You use clever tricks against opponents who underestimate you. I will not make that mistake." Marcus studied his opponent while checking his equipment. Gorvok carried a massive war club embedded with energy conduits that could deliver devastating electrical charges. In a modified atmospheric conditions, those energy attacks would be particularly effective against human physiology. "Begin." Gorvok's strategy was simple and effective. Advance steadily while using his energy weapon to control the combat space. His club could project electrical fields that made close approach extremely dangerous, while his natural armor rendered most attacks ineffective. Marcus found himself in genuine trouble for the first time since the tournament began. His usual tactics of mobility and precision striking were useless against an opponent who could control the entire arena with energy projections while possessing armor too thick for conventional weapons to penetrate. The fight became a war of attrition that favored Gorvok's superior physical capabilities. Marcus's shoulder wound slowed his movements, while the atmospheric conditions gradually sapped his strength. Each exchange left him more exhausted while Gorvok seemed unaffected. But exhaustion also brought a kind of clarity. As his physical capabilities degraded, Marcus was forced to rely more heavily on tactical thinking. He began to study Gorvok's attacks, not for immediate counters, but for long-term patterns that might reveal weaknesses. The breakthrough came when Marcus realized that Gorvok's energy weapon had a specific recharge cycle. The electrical projections were devastating, but required several seconds between uses to build up adequate charge. During those intervals, the weapon was just an oversized club. Marcus began timing his attacks to coincide with the recharge periods, using precise strikes against the weapon itself rather than trying to penetrate Gorvok's armor. Steel couldn't cut through natural armor, but it could damage technological components if applied with sufficient precision. "Clever," Gorvok acknowledged as sparks began flying from his weapon, "but ultimately futile. My armor protects vital areas. Your blade cannot reach anything important." Marcus smiled through his exhaustion. "Who says I'm trying to kill you?" His next attack targeted Gorvok's knees, not trying to penetrate armor, but applying force to joint structures that were designed to support massive weight. Even natural armor had mechanical limitations when stressed beyond design parameters. Gorvok's left knee buckled as joint cartilage failed under precisely applied pressure. The massive alien stumbled, his weight distribution shifted, and, suddenly, his armor became a liability rather than an asset. Marcus pressed his advantage ruthlessly, using Gorvok's damaged mobility against him. Unable to move effectively, the alien warrior became a stationary target for precisely placed attacks that gradually degraded his ability to fight effectively. The final blow came when Gorvok's damaged weapon finally failed completely. Without energy projections to control the combat space, he was reduced to fighting with a simple club against an opponent who had spent the entire match learning his movement patterns. Marcus's sword found the gap where Gorvok's helmet met his armor, sliding between protective plates to reach vital nerve clusters. The massive alien collapsed like a falling mountain, his weight shaking the arena floor. The crowd's reaction was subdued. They'd watched Marcus defeat two opponents who should have killed him easily, using tactics that seemed to violate established principles of combat effectiveness. Final match in 1 hour, the announcer declared. Human fighter Marcus Chun will face Destroyer Prime, guardian of the hegemony. Marcus felt his blood chill. Destroyer Prime wasn't just another arena fighter. It was a hegemony military construct, the most advanced combat unit in known space. Its presence here meant the tournament had become something more than entertainment. That's not legal under arena regulations. Marcus protested as medical staff treated his accumulated injuries. Seth's scales showed deep purple concern. Regulations have been modified. The tournament committee has determined that proper assessment of human combat capabilities requires testing against galactic military standards. Marcus understood. The galaxy's established powers had decided to end any questions about human capabilities definitively. They were bringing in a weapon of war to face a single human fighter with primitive equipment. Destroyer Prime entered the arena to absolute silence. The construct stood 8 feet tall, its form a perfect fusion of biological and technological components. Energy fields surrounded its body, protecting it from conventional attacks, while its multiple weapon systems could project devastating firepower across the entire arena. Human, the construct's voice was perfectly modulated, devoid of emotion or uncertainty. Analysis of your previous encounters has been completed. Tactical assessment indicates 99.97% probability of your elimination within the first 60 seconds of engagement. Marcus checked his equipment one final time. His sword felt heavier now. His shield arm ached from accumulated damage, and his shoulder wound throbbed with each heartbeat. Against any rational assessment, he should surrender rather than face certain death. But something in the construct's perfect confidence reminded him of every military briefing he'd ever attended where victory had been declared impossible. Human history was filled with battles that couldn't be won until someone found a way to win them anyway. Begin. Destroyer Prime's initial assault was overwhelming. Energy beams lanced across the arena floor, force projections created barriers and obstacles, and tracking systems locked onto Marcus's position with mechanical precision. The construct was fighting like a one-unit military formation, bringing overwhelming technological superiority to bear against a single opponent. Marcus survived the first minute by pure desperation, using every scrap of cover while his mind raced through possibilities. Conventional tactics were useless against an opponent with such overwhelming advantages. But conventions were exactly what he needed to abandon. The key insight came from watching Destroyer Prime's movement patterns. The construct fought with perfect efficiency, but efficiency assumed rational opponents who would respond predictably to overwhelming force. It wasn't programmed to handle opponents who might do something completely irrational. Marcus stopped trying to win the fight and started trying to break the engagement entirely. Instead of attacking the construct, he began destroying arena systems, lighting panels, atmospheric processors, even structural supports for the viewing areas. Cease destructive actions, Destroyer Prime commanded. Arena preservation protocols require protection of infrastructure. There was the weakness Marcus had been looking for. Destroyer Prime wasn't just a combat unit. It was programmed to protect the arena facility itself. Its perfect efficiency included constraints that could be exploited. Marcus began using the arena's own systems against the construct. Destroyed lighting panels created electrical fires that interfered with targeting systems. Damaged atmosphere processors released gases that scattered energy beams. Most importantly, structural damage to viewing areas created civilian safety concerns that forced Destroyer Prime to divide its attention. This is not acceptable combat behavior, the construct declared as it moved to protect fleeing spectators from falling debris. This is human combat behavior, Marcus replied, bringing down another support beam. We don't fight fair. We fight smart. The final sequence was chaos rather than structure combat. Marcus used the arena's failing systems to create conditions where Destroyer Prime's technological advantages became liabilities. Energy weapons were useless when firing them risked killing thousands of spectators. Perfect targeting systems failed when the environment became too chaotic to process. In the end, Marcus won not by defeating Destroyer Prime in combat, but by creating a situation where the construct's programming forced it to prioritize objectives other than his elimination. When structural collapse threatened the entire arena, Destroyer Prime chose to protect civilian lives rather than continue the fight. Match suspended due to facility emergency. The automated systems announced as Destroyer Prime worked to prevent total structural collapse. Marcus stood in the center of the ruined arena, sword still in hand, blood running from multiple wounds. He hadn't defeated the galaxy's most advanced combat unit in direct battle. He'd made the fight so costly and dangerous that winning became impossible. The crowd was evacuating in panic, but those who remained were silent. They'd watched a human fighter take on the hegemony's ultimate weapon and somehow avoid elimination. Not through superior strength or technology, but through tactical thinking that redefined the nature of the engagement itself. Ambassador Valeth approached across the debris-strewn arena floor, his skin cycling through colors Marcus had never seen. Remarkable, the ambassador said quietly. You've managed to avoid defeat without actually achieving victory. Technically, the match is incomplete. And technically, I'm still in the tournament, Marcus replied. Technically, yes. But practically, Valeth gestured at the ruined arena. There's no longer a functional venue for competition. Marcus looked around at the destruction he'd caused, then back at the ambassador. So what happens now? Now, Valeth's skin settled into resigned gray. The galaxy has to reconsider everything it thought it knew about human capabilities. In the distance, emergency crews worked to stabilize the arena structure, while news feeds across the galaxy tried to explain what had just happened. A single human, armed with primitive weapons and outnumbered by overwhelming odds, had somehow fought the tournament to a standstill. The arena had cheered his arrival. But Marcus suspected that by the time he left, the cheering would sound very different indeed. 3 days after the arena's partial collapse, Marcus sat in a medical facility aboard a neutral station, watching news feeds that couldn't decide whether he was a hero, a terrorist, or something unprecedented in galactic civilization. The shoulder wound was healing well, but the deeper implications of what had happened were spreading across known space like wildfire. The Galactic Council has requested an immediate session, Ambassador Valeth reported as he entered the medical bay. His skin showed colors Marcus had learned indicated extreme political stress. 17 member species have filed formal protests regarding the tournament's conclusion. Marcus muted the news feed showing footage of Destroyer Prime working to prevent total arena collapse. What kind of protests? Various complaints. The hegemony claims you violated combat protocols by attacking infrastructure instead of engaging properly. The Kylex matriarchy argues that your tactics were dishonorable and should result in automatic disqualification. Several minor species are demanding investigation into whether humans have been concealing military capabilities. And what does the Terran Colonial Authority say? Valeth's skin flickered rapidly. Nothing, officially. Unofficially, they're mobilizing every diplomatic asset they have to prevent this from becoming a larger crisis. Through the medical bay's viewport, Marcus could see ships from dozens of different species maintaining careful distances from each other. The tournament's inconclusive ending had created a political situation that no one knew how to resolve. Dr. Yithera, the Nexary physician overseeing his treatment, approached with final medical scans. Healing progresses well. You will recover fully from physical injuries. The psychological assessment, however, is unnecessary, Marcus finished. I know what I did and why I did it. Perhaps. But galactic medical protocols require evaluation after exposure to extreme combat stress. Dr. Ythera's scales showed professional concern. Your final match exhibited behavior patterns that deviate significantly from established norms for your species. Marcus considered that. The doctor was right. He'd pushed himself beyond normal human limits during the fight with Destroyer Prime. But that was what humans did when survival demanded it. They adapted, improvised, and found ways to win battles that should have been impossible. Doctor, what do your medical databases say about human psychological responses to impossible situations? That humans typically surrender when faced with overwhelming odds, as most rational species do. Dr. Ythera consulted her datapad. Your behavior suggests either psychological damage or capabilities not previously documented. A soft chime announced another visitor. Marcus was surprised to see Pip, the small maintenance technician who had provided crucial intelligence about arena modifications. Forgiveness for interruption, Pip squeaked nervously. But information has developed that human fighter should know. Marcus gestured for Pip to approach. What kind of information? Other species have been studying tournament recordings, not just for entertainment, but for tactical analysis. Pip's large eyes blinked rapidly. Human fighting methods are being discussed in military circles throughout known space. That was probably inevitable, perhaps, but some discussions involve cooperation rather than opposition. Pip moved closer, lowering his voice. Minor species who have been dominated by hegemony forces see possibilities in human tactical approaches. Marcus felt a cold realization settling in his stomach. Possibilities for what? For resistance. For changing established power structures. Pip's expression might have been excitement. If one human with primitive weapons can stalem hegemony's ultimate combat unit, what might coordinated human forces accomplish? Ambassador Valeth had been listening with growing alarm. This is exactly what we feared. Your actions at the arena weren't just individual achievement. They've become a symbol of potential human military capabilities. So what happens now? Before Valeth could answer, the medical bay's communication system activated. All personnel, priority announcement from Galactic Council. Tournament participant Marcus Chun of Terra is requested to appear before emergency session in 6 standard hours. Marcus looked at his companions. Requested or required? Required, Valeth confirmed. With full diplomatic immunity and protection, but attendance is not optional. The journey to the council chambers took place aboard a heavily escorted diplomatic vessel. Marcus watched through the viewports as ships from every major species maintained careful formations, each group preserving distance from potential adversaries. The political tension was visible even in the way military vessels positioned themselves. What should I expect from this session? Marcus asked as they approached the massive space station that housed the Galactic Council. Questions about human military doctrine, primarily. Valeth's skin showed worried purple. The major powers need to understand whether your performance represents individual capability or species-wide potential. And if I refuse to answer, then they'll make their own assumptions, which might be worse than the truth. The council chambers were an impressive sight, a vast spherical space with seating arrangements that accommodated hundreds of different species. Representatives floated, sat, hung, or positioned themselves according to their physiological requirements. But all attention focused on the central speaking platform where Marcus now stood. Chancellor,